how did I end up back here again? Because I worked so hard to lose 100 pounds and now I gained 50 back. I still follow all of the same keto and fasting rules, so how did this happen? I have to try something new. I have to figure this out.
In January of 2022, I was close to being the sickest and fattest version of myself that I'd ever been. Sure, my scale only crept back up to 190, and before losing 100 pounds with keto and fasting, I was clocking in around 245. But that 245 number, that was right after my first pregnancy. And since I started the pregnancy at the top of my constant yo-yoing weight range, it's not too much of a stretch that I gained 65 pounds during pregnancy. The worst thing I remember about weighing 245 is looking in the mirror and seeing just how big my arms were. Because in my yo-yo dieting past, where the scale never really went past 180, sure, I hated my stomach, and trying to hide back fat while squeezing in a club top wasn't easy. But before pregnancy, I never had a problem with my arms. And once my weight began creeping back up from 135 all the way to 190, here came the chunky arms staring back at me every single time I looked in the mirror. I couldn't for the life of me figure out how I got back to this desperate place of hating every inch of my body, including my arms. How could this happen, especially after having so much success with diets that I thought were easy? Not only did I hate my body, but my hormones went bonkers. This led to problems like chronic fatigue, migraines 3 to 4 days each week, and all kinds of other health problems that made it seem impossible to get back to that healthy body that I loved. But something clicked nearly 2 years ago, and I finally did it. I lost the weight that I regained, only this time, I lost it in the most sustainable way that I've ever done it. And believe you me, I have done it all sorts of ways.
That's what she said.
But even though I'm at this amazing place where I easily maintain a healthy weight while eating way more than I ever have, there's still plenty of mistakes that I made along the way. And since it's that time of year where 26 million people start a diet with some flashy plan that promises quick weight loss, I wanted to reflect on what really worked for me and how a sustainable fat loss plan is way different than any of the quick weight loss plans that I followed in the past. Because I finally found that plan that makes it easy to keep the weight off. Only it's not any of the popular diet plans that promote quick weight loss. And my results didn't come from pricey supplements, slashing calories to unsustainable levels, endless cardio, or eliminating any of my favorite foods. For the first time, pretty much ever, I no longer struggle with maintaining a healthy weight. And even though it took decades, I'm so thankful that I finally learned what works when it comes to sustainable weight loss. Since I don't want you to fall into the 87% of people who break their new habits only 12 days into the new year, I want to share how I finally got to this place. When I was ready to get back at it in January of 2022, I started out as the old me who was desperate to lose the weight no matter what it took. Even though I stopped tracking, therefore had zero idea of how much I was eating, I immediately slashed calories to 1,300 to 1,500 calories most days. And while chronic fatigue does nothing when it comes to keeping activity high, I still jumped back into a plan of working out as hard as I could for as long as I could on cardio machines. Because back then, if I didn't come home from the gym drenched in sweat, did I even really work out? I also had the mindset that if I wanted to lose weight, then I had to cut way back on carbs. And while my hormones wouldn't allow me to get into strict ketosis, I'd still try to eat as few carbs as possible without setting off a headache the next day. So I settled on a plan where I'd allow myself up to 80 grams of carbs in a day. Not quite keto, but good enough to lose weight, right? Oh, and I believe that weight loss wasn't even possible if I didn't fast a minimum of 16 hours per day. Plus, the lower I cut carbs and the more I fasted, the better, right? But something happened while I was sweating off all of those calories on the elliptical. I fell down the YouTube rabbit hole with videos that conflicted with everything I knew about weight loss. And even though it was hard at first to accept that if I want a sustainable fat loss, that my energy balance mattered way more than how much I could fast or how few carbs I ate, I eventually came around. Then came videos about cardio for weight loss and how it was pretty much a waste of time. As someone who previously had a gym-grade elliptical in her bedroom, this was a tough one for me to believe. But these videos that the algorithm kept suggesting went deeper and deeper into how my metabolism actually worked. And I learned things like sticking to the weight side of the gym yields way better fat loss results long term than endless cardio ever could. But since movement is still great for overall health, especially mental health, which I had to keep strong in order to keep my head in the weight loss game, I still walked most days. Plus, I noticed walking suppressed my appetite, which made a moderate calorie deficit easier to stick with. But I only wanted to be in a moderate deficit since I also learned that the lower I slashed calories at the beginning, that even though this seemed like the faster way to lose weight, this was one of the biggest reasons I struggled with yo-yoing weight for decades. So I learned that this time, if I stuck to a more reasonable deficit, while I may lose at a slower pace, I'd actually reach my goal faster. And that's because this time I wouldn't completely spiral out of control with a plan that's too hard to stick to and eventually regain everything that I worked so hard to lose. This time, instead of automatically slashing calories to starvation levels of 12 or 1300 per day, I went with a more reasonable plan to eat between 1900 to 2000 calories most days. And I ate that much because I also learned that if I wanted to build muscle while also losing fat, that my body needed nutrients in order to build that muscle, especially protein. And all of a sudden, I wanted to build muscle because I learned when I made building muscle my priority, then my body burns more calories at rest, which means I don't have to work nearly as hard to keep getting results. Plus, whenever I go on vacation or life gets a little too crazy to keep up with tracking, well, since my metabolism is on fire from all of that muscle building, I don't have to worry about regaining everything I lost. As long as I don't go overboard by eating everything I deprived myself of while losing weight, my scale pretty much stays the same. But that's something else I figured out, that I don't have to deprive myself of anything I love. While any fat loss plan requires some discipline, especially during the day to make sure I'm eating in the right calorie and protein ranges for my goals, I still allow myself some of my favorite treats pretty much most nights and on weekends. In this plan, where I eat to build muscle in a slight calorie deficit, and I no longer rely on excessive cardio for fat loss, well, I have to be upfront and let you know that it did take a little bit longer to get my scale moving this way. But that's mostly because my initial focus was on body recomp, which meant my results didn't always show up on the scale. So I had to figure out other ways to track my progress to keep me on track. Things like measuring my waist each month and taking progress photos consistently showed me that my plan was working even when the scale said otherwise. But the good news about following a slower, more sustainable plan to lose fat, where I no longer view the scale as the be all end all for progress, is there's no more struggle. Taking time to build some solid habits over the past few years means I no longer have to struggle with anything related to diet or fat loss. If you're ready to build a few solid habits of your own to make your fat loss plan easier this year, then watch this video next.